So, as you've heard, my name is Eric Sveinson, and I'm here to share with you a really exciting concept, that there is hope from people dealing with mental despair, or even just as small as stress. And I've been working with the company True Hope for about 9 years, and I myself have experienced the benefits and the profound effects that they've had on my mental health. And so I share this message and I beam it from the rooftops because of how much it's helping people. But I want to share with you that this company, we're not here because we saw a need in the marketplace or we saw an opportunity to sell a product. We're honestly here because the Stephan family, Tony Stephan, who's the founder of the company, they literally lived through the gripping despair of mental illness. I myself have had my own troubles as well, and I've seen the benefits in me. So to understand where we kind of came from, it's important to understand how the body works. Every single system in our body, whether it's the skeletal, the integumentary, the muscular systems, they all are connected together and the brain is the hub. In order for these systems to work properly, we need nutrients. We need minerals and vitamins. When I say minerals, I'm talking about calcium, magnesium, zinc, copper, iron, boron. And the thing is, we need all of these in order for our body to function properly. But I'm going to step out on a limb here and I'm going to suggest that mental health is related to a deficiency in these minerals. Mental illness, problems with mental health. So, Dr. Rodolfo Linus actually brought out a very interesting concept. He called it the domino effect. So let's say that you're going along in life and things are feeling pretty good, okay? Let's say that you're not even stressed out and life is just, you're zenned out like Buddha. But then all of a sudden something terrible happens to you, which I hope it doesn't, but we all go through traumatic experiences. Someone passes away, a divorce, whatever the case may be. Your brain is now in super mode and it's like hitting the gas on the car and you're burning through more nutrition. And then what happens is the brain is just an emergency trying to keep the systems going. You're in fight or flight, you're not digesting your food properly. So even if the nutrients were there to begin with, you're not getting what you need out of your food. And then your brain starts to, okay, well, I can sacrifice my mental well-being just to keep my heart and liver and kidneys going. But I promise you other diseases are also related and start to ensue, such as osteoporosis, diabetes, whatever. And we get into a state of disease. So a lot of people say, well, why can't I just eat healthy? Why can't I, eat really good food and eat nutritionally? And I say, you know what? Absolutely. I'm a whole foods person. I swear by eating dense, nutritious food. I'm currently a student as a holistic nutritionist. I stand and believe in eating natural. But the reality is our food is not what it used to be, even if you're consuming organic sources. The reality is you go to the grocery store, you pick up a really dense, beautiful looking tomato. But does that mean that it's nutritious? Well, to understand that, I'm going to share with you how the nutrients get into the food to begin with, and hopefully it'll make a little more sense. And then after we talk about this, I'm going to share with you the story that really convinced me as to working for the company and got me to try the product because I've seen these results. But first, in this scenario, when you've got a natural soil base for your garden, you have minerals such as calcium, magnesium, and zinc in the soil. The earthworm has a natural gizzard inside of it like a chicken, and it crushes down these minerals to be a microscopic size. It has to be that small so that it can get into the roots of plants. But plants on their own are incapable of taking in these minerals. So they need the help of mycorrhizal, or for simple terms, it's like a mushroom, it's a fungi, and there's other bacteria in the soil that are beneficial. It's alive with life. Real soil is alive and vibrant. What happens is these mycorrhizal or fungi then stretch out and they grab onto these minerals and they say, you can give me sugar from the sun and we're going to give the minerals to you. It's an awesome symbiotic relationship, right? Where our bodies are similar, we can't just absorb straight minerals. We need to have them in a food form or chelated. We call it chelation when it's bound to the mineral. Otherwise, we can't ingest them. So the plants are the same way. This is a good relationship. It works. But what if I told you that this is unfortunately in a very dire situation? Modern agriculture has very much threatened this system that nature has been doing for thousands of years. As you're probably all aware, pesticides and herbicides are on the rise. Many proponents of GMOs would say that, and they promise that it would reduce the amounts of pesticides and herbicides. But the reality is there are peer-reviewed research studies to show that this is not true, that these chemicals are increasing every day. Even on organic soils, often these soils have been used once for conventional farming. So what do you think is going to happen if I spray something on the soil, like glyphosate, which is otherwise known as Roundup, a lot of people spray their lawns with this stuff, when it's actually almost like an antibiotic, what do you think is going to happen to these microbes and these earthworms in the soil? They're going to die because they can't handle the toxicity. They don't have the systems like we do to flush it, but even then, human beings are suffering from this. So we basically destroyed the system in agriculture that is allowing these nutrients to get into the roots. And then farmers are in emergency mode. They're spraying like crazy, and then they're also not restoring back minerals into the soil. Because you can't just keep taking and then expect it to be there forever. You have to restore it. Organizations like the Earth Summit of Rio de Janeiro have actually concluded that North American soil is as much as 80% deficient in mineral content. What does that actually mean to any of us? Well, what it really translates down to, including work from Anne-Marie Myers, there's a lot of studies out there, that you have to consume roughly about 6 times the amount of spinach that your great-grandparents used to have to eat in order to get the nutrition out of it. Now, compound that with not digesting your food properly because you're stressed, compound that with not getting enough healthy food because very few of us are, and then other toxins in the way, and you can it's not very hard to ask why we're sick. Many people are dealing with mental health or other illnesses. So deficiency plays a huge role, and I invite you to explore that in your own belief systems if you don't already. But we're going to share with you some interesting stuff here. So when you're dealing with depression or anxiety, let's say you already have it or you've gone through a stressful experience, what would you normally be told to do? Go to your doctor, right? They're the experts. So you go to your doctor, and what is your doctor going to recommend to you? He's going to recommend that you get on an Ssri, or a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Now, I'm not here to knock or bash medications. Sometimes they're needed. For some people, they work. What I'm going to present to you, though, is research that's done by Joel Kaufman. Now, Joel Kaufman, it's interesting because this is a meta-analysis of many different sources of data showing whether these drugs are effective for mental illness. Well, this was all funded by pharmaceutical companies, and I'm here to share to you today that the majority of them are no better than a placebo. That is what the research shows. Furthermore, you are actually not getting the best case scenario, and in rare situations, it would work 30% better than a placebo. Plus, you're getting the side effects, right? Now, I'm not here to scare you. I'm just here to share with you the information. You can take of it what you will. But may I propose this thought and this question to you? Can we expect any better results by applying a synthetic chemical to our bodies for our mental health, such as an Ssri, than we can by applying the same chemical to the soil in agriculture? I'm going to say that no, in my personal belief and the science behind that belief, because the roots, we're not getting to the root problem, just like in nature. And the root problem is deficiency or either toxicity. So we want to try and let the body, which has been doing it for thousands of years, have what it needs to heal properly. And when you have the right nutrition, even in nature, many farmers will argue that, and I've done it myself because I'm a gardener, when you have a healthy soil, the plant doesn't get attacked by bugs like other plants. Human beings, when we're healthy, we don't have the disease or decay like we used to, or like we could. When we didn't know a lot about that, back in the 50s, and this is where the story began, Debbie Preet was sitting on her father's lap. And, she came from, a really beautiful family. But Gordon, her father, unfortunately, was dealing with severe mental illness. To the point, and back then, you think about what we know now, they didn't know a lot. He was severely aggressive and violent in the home, and there was some abuse that occurred there. But astonishingly, Debbie's resolution for being and the real person that she was shined in her life. She was an artistic, musical individual. She loved poetry. And as she had gone into her teenage years, these qualities of her personal relations with others, people wanted to be around her. And I'm convinced that it was these same qualities that attracted Anthony Steffen to her. The two of them fell madly in love, and they were high school sweethearts. They thought they knew everything about life, so much that they ended up having 9 children. So, big family, right? Well, it wasn't done yet. Debbie loved kids so much that she later on convinced her husband that she wanted to adopt another. So they ended up having 10 kids in the family. There was a lot of love in this home, but I want to share with you the reality. Debbie did not escape the conditions that her father was dealing with. It started to get worse, and she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. For those of you that don't understand, bipolar, you don't have control. You can be depressed for days on end like Debbie was, or you can flip into the manic state where you're over the top. Inappropriate, radical behavior occurs. In her case, she would be depressed, or then some days she'd be at 3 o'clock in the morning vacuuming or putting on makeup. This was her life, and they tried to deal with it. Some people, some of her children referred to her as Happy Debbie, Spendy Debbie when she got into that space of manic or mania. And it just got worse and worse as the years went on. And in January of 1994, it got so bad that Debbie became desperate. Debbie Steffen decided to go to her doctor because she didn't want to be on medications, but she didn't know where else to turn. And so her doctor prescribed her Prozac. Now at this time, Tony had been away on this business trip for about 2 weeks, and he didn't know that his wife had gone to the doctor. But nearing the end of his trip, he sensed intuitively that something was wrong. And he returned home to find his dear sweetheart had committed suicide. I can only imagine what he would have gone through. And I'm sorry if this story hits home to some of you, but it is the reality. There's a lot of people that struggle, a lot of people that need help and healing. And in this case, he didn't know what to do. And to make matters more difficult, Autumn and Joseph, his 2 children, were expressing similar symptoms as their mother, and they too were diagnosed with bipolar. Autumn was also diagnosed with schizophrenic tendencies as well as Joseph. Joseph, the story takes place in the community of Cardston, which is in Selwyn, Alberta, about half an hour north of the American border, if you're not aware of it. And Joe was this aggressive individual. He was violent. He liked to harbor guns and weapons and was paranoid all the time that the government was going to attack him. And people were scared. They had him on 900 milligrams of lithium per day. He was completely out of control, and it wasn't working. If you could look at his symptoms now and the way that he was, he would be like he would be the same as your next high school shooter in the way that he was acting. Totally out of control. Autumn, moving 5 hours north to Calgary, was newly married, had recently given birth to her first child, James. She was the poster child for the worst case scenario. She was in and out of psych ward. She was on suicide watch like her brother. She couldn't be left alone with her son, James, because it was feared that she would do harm to her child. To the point that she was on 6 different medications, one to counteract the other. Haldol, Rivotril, Ativan, you name it. She had tried them all, and it wasn't working. It was just, they called it stable. I wouldn't call it stable. She was a chemical mess. And so, if you can understand and appreciate Tony's situation, loses his wife, now it looks like he's going to lose his kids too. So, he didn't give up, and he went to the family doctor convinced that there was going to be some other medication that would help Joe. And the doctor, not being a psychiatrist, said, I don't really specialize in this, but after pushing him, he agreed to schedule an appointment with a specialist out of Calgary. So Tony took the 2-hour trek up to Calgary from Cardston, and he sits down with this specialist. Now, she's one of the top individuals that's available, and starts explaining to her Joe and his symptoms and how he's aggressive and how he's violent. And he doesn't know what to do, and she kind of says, well, Mr. Steffen, spare me the details. I've dealt with hundreds of bipolar patients on a regular basis. This isn't anything new. And he's kind of like not really listening to her because he's so convinced that she's not getting his problem. No, Miss Psychiatrist, you don't understand. My son is dealing with this and this and this. What other solution or medication can you provide me? And she starts to get impatient. I mean, I imagine any doctor would when your patient isn't listening to you. And she pulls out the DSM-4 from the shelf, now known as the DSM-5, and this is what doctors use for diagnosing conditions. And she says, Mr. Steffen, do you see what it says here? Pulls up her chair, he leans in. It says bipolar disorder is a reoccurring condition. Still not getting it. Mr. Steppen, you need a wake-up call. I'm sorry, but it means that your conditions will not get better. Your son Joe will not graduate from college, and he's likely not going to get married. And Mr. Steppen, I hate to say it, but you need to plan for the likelihood of more funerals in your family. That's what she said. The door's shut. He said it was like the sound of a shotgun in his head. He drove home those 2 desperately boring, difficult, long hours. He says in his own mind that, I swear I felt more depressed than my son Joe did. And he gets home, and he could have given up. He could have accepted his fate. He could have made the best that he could with his children, like the psychiatrist recommended. The best time that he could with them. And many people say, well, she must have been your worst enemy. And he says, no, she was my best friend, because she kicked me in the gut so hard that it made me realize that I wasn't going to find an answer there. And like anybody in a difficult situation, when you become desperate, you'll try anything. But he had a very profound faith in God. And he knew that if anybody would know the answer, he would. So he cried out in prayer and meditation and just doing everything he could, trusting that the higher power would give him a solution. Not knowing how it would come, not knowing where it would come from, but he had faith that he was going to find something. And surely, if anybody would know the answer, God would. So he went through this agonizing journey for almost 2 years until November of 1995. And in November of 1995, barely keeping the pieces together in his family, he ended up meeting with a friend by the name of David, who he was working with as a property manager. He's walking down the church hallway, generally keeps things to himself, and he turns to his friend and says, listen, I got to share this with you. I feel inspired to do this. I don't know why, but my son Joe is dealing with this and this and this and this. And he's aggressive and he's violent. And David turns to him and says, you know, Tony, I don't really know anything about mental illness, but it's interesting you're sharing this with me because my background is in animal biology, and I've been doing this for 20 years. And we have pigs, hogs that are aggressively, ear and tail biting syndrome, where they'll darn near kill each other if left to their own devices. And Tony's like, well, what do you do? He says, we learned to give them vitamins and minerals in their feed, and it calmed them down. In his own mind, he says, in his own words, that it was like a light went from his head to his toes. He felt the warmth that he hadn't experienced with this before. He finally felt hope. He didn't know how it was going to be. He had no idea how it was going to come about. But he was so convinced that this was the answer that he started turning the Steppen kitchen into a mad science lab with all kinds of different ingredients, trying to replicate this hog formula. And so they were getting products from different health food stores and supplement retailers. And after putting them all together, it wasn't working. Joe was actually the guinea pig. And the poor guy, right? But after several months of trial and error, he learned that the balance had to be just right. There had to be a specific combination of minerals, calcium to magnesium to zinc to copper. And in January of 1996, Joe turned a corner. In his own words, within about 5 days, he said, I felt the fog lifted. He was no longer angry. He was starting to become calm and gentle. His real self was coming out, the real Joe. That's what this is about, the real individual coming out, who you really are, healing the real person. And within 30 days, Joe got completely off of his lithium. He started to get better, which was just unheard of, right? And Dad Steppen was so convinced that this was going to work for his daughter too. So he travels all the way up to Calgary to try and help her. Now, the concoction that they discovered was colloidal mineral, calcium, grapeseed extract, and a multivitamin. It was just a wide array of supplements. There was no True Hope, there was no nothing. It was just sourced products from a manufacturer. So he goes up to Autumn, and this is literally a picture of her with her medications that she's been on and off of. And he says, this has helped Joe, this is going to help you. And she turned him away and said, Dad, my psychiatrist says that if I rock the boat, I will die. And she's thinking, here's my father, who was a boiler engineer and property manager. What the heck does he know about nutrition or mental health? And Dana, her husband's kind of getting irate, like, how dare you suggest that she gets off of her drugs? So he had to respect that, and he went back home to Cardston. But then something magical happened. Dana had to go away on a work trip. And so he brought Autumn home because she couldn't be left alone with her son James, brings her home to stay with the Stephens. He goes away, and during this time, she has a psychotic breakdown. Doesn't sound magical, but it was magical because Tony said, we're not doing this. We're going to get this into you, and we're going to help you. And in her own words, I'm not sure how they got it into me. And in Tony's words, I don't want to use the word kidnapping or constraint, but he managed to start giving these supplements to her. Now, Autumn could not shower without having her clothes on. She felt so open in her chest. In her own words, she had a dark, gaping hole. She had suicidal thoughts regularly. She was constantly hearing voices. She was paranoid to the nine. Click, the door shuts. Within a few days, Autumn had turned a corner. Autumn was starting to shower like a normal human being. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but in this case, it was a huge deal. To the point that shortly after, she went to her dad and said, Dad, I think we can do this. I no longer have these ugly suicidal thoughts. The hole is gone in my chest. And the color started to come back into her life. The real Autumn, again, was shining forward. And it was absolutely a miracle. Now, the community of Cardston, the people started to hear about Joseph and Autumn, but particularly Joe, because here you had kind of this kind of angry individual who's now no longer angry. Who's this soft teddy bear, as his sister refers to him as. And they start knocking on Tony's door. Will it help for my son's depression? Will it help for my daughter's ADD? Because the drugs aren't working. And he says, well, I don't know, but what have you got to lose? So he started supplying this supplementation to people in the community. And they started getting better. And we learned at this point in time that when you can supply the right source of nutrition, our bodies don't recognize ADD, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia as separate things like the Western boxed mindset does. You can heal it, and the body is able to balance the brain becomes functional, and people's lives are healed and restored. It was amazing. To the point that Tony felt like he didn't want this blessing to be just exclusive to his family and select individuals in Cardston. And he knew that he needed to get it out to the world and help other families. So he approached Dr. Brian Kolb. He wanted this to be validated in research. So Dr. Brian Kolb out of the University of Lethbridge says, I don't deal with human trials, but let's refer you to my friend, Dr. Bonnie Kaplan, out of the University of Calgary. Now, Bonnie Kaplan sat down and listened to the story and said, I'm really glad that you found healing in your family, Tony. But I've dealt with all the flakes of the 80s. I'm sorry, this just sounds like snake oil. I can't accept it. I'm glad that you've received benefits. So he went back to Dr. Kolb feeling a little bit dismayed. And Dr. Kolb says, it's okay. I'm going to supply symptom evaluation forms to the community of Cardston, those that are taking these supplements. And I'm going to have them postmarked back to my office. And what these forms do is they help doctors see whether a treatment is working or not, right? Now, Dr. Kolb had already been seeing some results with his brother-in-law who had been dealing with anxiety for 30 years and nothing had helped him. Got him on these supplements and he had seen results that he'd never seen before, so he already was starting to see the benefits. So after a while, these reports started coming into his office of individuals that were on it, and Dr. Kolb was blown away by the data that he was seeing in front of him. He then called Bonnie and said, listen, Dr. Kaplan, you've got to take a second look at this. I think we're onto something here. And she reluctantly agreed to visit with Tony again. This time he shows up at her office with Autumn, and she's looking. Now here's an expert. Dr. Kaplan is a neuroscientist. She knows what she's doing. She looks at Autumn's conditions. Oh, she's got, schizophrenia and bipolar and all of this. And she looks at Autumn and she looks down and says, I don't see this person in front of me. I see someone who's articulate. I see someone who's kind, who's loving, who's put together. This does not make sense. I wouldn't expect to see this in an individual that is diagnosed with this. And so after having this conversation with everything else, she said, we are either on to a complete medical breakthrough or this is complete hogwash, this complete snake oil. But she agreed to do the first study of its kind in the world with 12 bipolar patients on this supplement. So these were people that were medicated, that were really troubled, that hadn't found success. And they started to get better, which she had never seen before. But then about halfway through the study, something peculiar happened. It stopped working. People started to go back into their original symptoms. Even the people in Cardston, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. So the university decided to do an analysis of the ingredients, thank goodness, but they had to stop the study. And what they were discovering was that the ratios were not coming back the same. The quality of the product was not consistent. You can't really study a product that's not consistent. And so Tony, out of desperation, went back to the manufacturer where he was getting it from the States at the time, and they said, we can't help you. I'm sorry, this is the best that we've got. And so he went on his own journey to try and source other suppliers. He couldn't find it. And remember, this was so specific, it had to be in the right ratios and the right balance. And he's praying and trying to figure this out, and he decided, you know what? We've got to make our own supplement. It's the only way we're going to get this precise of a formula. So he met a business partner down in the States who helped them formulate it, and Empower Plus was born. 16 minerals, 14 vitamins, 3 amino acids, and 3 antioxidants. By today's standards even, it would be considered a high-end multivitamin. We've made vast improvements since then. Back then, you had to take 24 to 48 capsules to see a difference. I promise you don't, it's more like 4 capsules. It's a lot lower now. We've made some improvements to the formula, just a little bit, right? So, Empower Plus was now able to be used in a professional format. It was cheaper, it worked better. Bonnie Kaplan started the study up again. This time it was 10 bipolar patients, and she started to get excited because people started getting off of their SSRIs, which doesn't happen. And in 2001, October of 2001, she released her preliminary findings to the Psychiatric Association. And if we had social media back then like we do today, it would be considered viral. CTV News caught wind of it, Global News, Fox News as the years went on. But I'm going to share with you a clip of CTV News and what they discovered.
Tonight on CTV News, can a nutritional supplement help people suffering with a troubling mental disorder? CTV's Avis Favreau has an exclusive report you won't want to miss. Watch CTV News tonight at 11.
In medical news tonight, there is new reason for optimism for sufferers of bipolar disorder, a condition that causes manic depression and a condition that affects hundreds of thousands of Canadians. According to findings of a small study presented today to the Canadian Psychiatric Association, a combination of vitamins and minerals may alleviate the disorder's debilitating symptoms. CTV's medical specialist Avis Favreau reports.
Bipolar illness ran through Tony Stephan's family. His wife Debbie committed suicide. His son and daughter were also ill and on drugs that didn't work.
She had already been taking medication for over 4.5 years, and she was going to suicide. It wasn't helping. My son was on 900 milligrams of lithium per day and was absolutely out of control.
Then he learned of minerals and vitamins given to pigs with a nervous disorder. In desperation, he gave a variation of the supplements to his son.
Within 30 days, he no longer experienced any of the symptoms of bipolar affective disorder.
Both his children, he says, are still on the supplements and are well some 4 years later. Now, doctors at the University of Calgary say they have intriguing early results from a group of 10 bipolar patients on the same supplements. Most had less depression, fewer manic episodes, and improved mental well-being.
The decrease in their symptoms is of a magnitude that is very impressive. Any medication that ever had this effect would catch a lot of people's attention.
And most have cut their standard drug use by 2/3.
This is an entirely different approach to the standard medical therapies that we use now.
But Steve Morton, who was part of the Calgary study, says the nutrients helped put his life in order after the bipolar illness left him suicidal and in hospital.
This has brought me to recognize a new me, and has allowed me to become, you know, a new person.
In fact, the Alberta government is investing more than $500,000 to fund more rigorous studies of these supplements.
Wow. So the Alberta government had actually decided to invest $544,000 because they saw the value in what this micronutrient formula could potentially provide to the Canadian people. It could restore people back to work and off of disability. You know, it's going to get them to becoming contributing members of society. And it's going to lower the burden of the cost on mental illness in the hospitals. And it was really exciting. This money was going to go into a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled study to really vigorously test this to see if it was what it seemed to be. And we were going along, and at the time, we had 3,000 Canadians that were currently on our supplements, and they were doing well. And we got a phone call. Tony got a phone call from Health Canada. Hello, this is Health Canada. And he's thinking, oh, great. You know, you've heard about this. Maybe we can bless more lives and we can help more people. This is awesome. This is Health Canada. Mr. Steppen, we know what you're doing, and you need to shut it down. We pulled your funding. We've shut down all of that, and you need to stop doing what you're doing or comply with our drug safety testing. What? No, I don't think you're understanding me. This isn't a drug, he says. This is a vitamin and mineral supplement. What are you talking about? And they said, Mr. Steppen, when you're using it to treat bipolar, we don't care what it is. It's a drug in our mind. And so at the time, there was no such thing as what we call natural product numbers, which are on supplements. They can't be legally sold in Canada without an NPN. It was just DIN, which stands for Drug Identification Number. In order for Empower Plus, a humble 36 ingredient nutrient product, to be able to comply, it would have cost billions of dollars, and it was like telling a cat to be a dog. It wasn't going to happen because most pharmaceuticals are 1 to 3 chemical ingredients. It's pretty easy to have purity and tests on those. This was impossible. Things that are naturally, we would hope, were found in our food, right? So after arguing with them for several months, through phone calls and papers, he's like, I'm not shutting down. Letters were going to them back and forth. Tony felt like he had a mission, and it wasn't his, it was God's mission to help people in the despairs of mental illness, that he wasn't going to stop. So he decided that he was going to carry on, and it started to get really aggressive. Ron Legionnaire, the head of the Alberta Mental Health Chapter, this is no small fry, he's an expert, actually warned Health Canada and said, listen, if you shut down True Hope, you are going to have the likelihood of suicides. Not a smart idea. You're playing with several thousand, there was 3,000 Canadians at the time, like I said, you're playing with their mental health. Health Canada ignored his warning. And the summer of 2003, our small True Hope support center that was taking phone calls from Canadians and helping them was raided by the RCMP SWAT team and 9 Health Canada agents. They were told that we were an illegal drug operation. Might as well have been a meth lab or a cocaine operation or something. And when the head of the police walked out of there, the sergeant, he was very angry because he was told that it was something else, and he looked at the bottle and he's like, vitamins and minerals, this isn't a drug. And he felt his time had been wasted. All they came out with was a few scared receptionists and a few boxes of paper. But at the same time, Health Canada did the worst. They shut down our supply of product that was shipping to Canadians' doorsteps, so the Canadian people were without. It was a very scary time. There was individuals that were smuggling product illegally across the border. It was flagged as a red flag dangerous substance. So we had no choice. We had thousands of Canadians, pleading with phone calls and letters begging to have this supplement. We solicited the help of many members of Parliament who were on our side, thankfully, saying this is ridiculous. The pressure started to become too great that Health Canada, after a while, finally decided that this was looking really bad for them, and they allowed the supplement to come back through the border. But of course, damages had been done, and we were trying to pick up the pieces and get our organization running again. And then Health Canada issued us a charge. They charged us for criminally disobeying the original mandate to shut down under the Food and Drug Act. We then had no choice but to take them to the Alberta Provincial Courts in 2005. It was 3 grueling weeks of court history. And on one side, you've got the Canadian people that are begging for their lives. And on the other side, you've got Health Canada saying it's a dangerous drug. Now, the Canadian people were supported by Dr. Bonnie Kaplan. They were also supported by Dr. Charles Popper. Now, Dr. Charles Popper is one of the leading psychiatric professors out of the University of Harvard. He, through a long story short, came to start using Empower Plus in his practice because he saw that it was effective and that it worked. So the judge got to hear all of these expert opinions. He got to also analyze how True Hope at the time was working with individuals to safely guide them on the process of transitioning them off of their medications. And I'm talking medications, I'm exclusively referring to mood-altering medications, and only on to the Empower Plus supplement. And so the judge got to hear it all. And after 3 weeks, we were scared. But we won. We won! So exciting. We had 3 court victories. Number 1, we were ruled the experts in doing what we're doing because they do not teach doctors in medical school how to transition off of these SSRIs and onto something natural. They just don't. We were doing it. Secondly, we were ordered to continue doing what we're doing. So not only do I believe in this awesome mission, I am only here on court order, ladies and gentlemen. Just kidding. But the third ruling was that the Judge Meager then said that had we actually disobeyed Health Canada in the first place, we would have been held criminally liable for the damages to the Canadian people. So he basically said that he blessed our decision, or basically said that it was okay that we had disobeyed Health Canada. I mean, how often do you hear that, right? So at the time of this issue, researchers were really excited to research the product, but then they were scared to because they were worried the government was going to shut it down. So the momentum that we originally had was lost. But I promise you today, it's exciting stuff. There are now 14 universities, most of them peer-reviewed studies around the world, over 34 medical journal publications, now testifying that this Empower Plus formula doesn't just help with bipolar, helps with stress, post-traumatic stress syndrome, autism, depression, ADD, ADHD, rage, aggression, helping people with psychosis, schizophrenia, things like that. And we even have some research that's showing now it's been helping regrow damaged brain cells. People that have concussions. We have individuals, and I can't say their names, but individuals in the NHL that are currently being blessed by this because of concussions. And it's just been amazing. It's been a blessing. So Joseph, now 20 years bipolar free, went on to have a beautiful family of his own and started using the supplement in his family. Just lives changed. Autumn, 3 beautiful girls that she wouldn't have otherwise had. That's what it's about, changing lives. Beautiful family. She later went on to write this book, which, if you're interested, it's one of those reads that you can't put down. I would recommend going to our booth and checking it out. We have it just across from Healthy Planet there, the True Hope booth. And we talk about that, and it's just become an awesome seller. But now the product is called EMP, Essential Mineral Power. Now I want to be clear, I'm not here to sell you on a product. I'm here to sell you on an idea that nutrition can fix and repair homes and lives and heal hearts. But I'd like to share with you why ours is interesting and unique. EMP not only has the right ratios of minerals, but it's actually created in the same way that nature produces minerals for plants. We take 4 days to produce a batch, and simply put, the minerals are bound to an organic molecule, much like they would in the soil, like the fungi I talked about, that they literally cross the blood-brain barrier. So when you take it, you feel the difference. If you're not dealing with any mental health concerns, most individuals will feel improved cognition. They'll feel reduced stress. They'll have better elevation in energy, memory, focus. I mean, who doesn't want that, right? We're always dealing with a busy lifestyle these days. So that's EMP. Now, if you're on medications and you're not happy with them, that's your choice. We also have a program at True Hope that you can work with us and we can help you with that. And we'll also work with your doctor if you want to do that too, to help you with that. I'll just quickly touch base. Amino acids, we came out with this because people needed to detox from these medications. It helps with withdrawal, but these amino acids are also beneficial for tissue repair and cellular healing, gut health. If you're an athlete and you want to get quick, fast-acting aminos into your tissues, this is amazing because it's in the same balance and spectrum as mother's milk, so it's literally the perfect protein for humans, and it works really well with EMP. But if you're unsure of what you need and you want to try a good nutrient supplement, EMP is the first one we obviously recommend. Now this is really cool. We came out with inositol because some people have additional elevated moments of stress or they have panic attacks. You've got your foundation of EMP, but sometimes you need a little bit more. Inositol is a sweet tasting powder. We call it our Zen product because literally when you take a teaspoon or two under your tongue, it calms you down within about 5 minutes. I have a lot of mothers that I've heard from, my wife including, who gives it to their children and it calms them down within a few minutes if they're being aggressive or whatever, right? Unruly kids, who doesn't want that? And they think they're getting a bedtime treat. How wonderful. It's a good product, right? So that's inositol for that kind of thing. Iodine, if you're dealing with thyroid conditions. So I want to clarify, we didn't just start coming out with other products because we wanted to sell more things and make more money. We came out with these products because we needed more to supply people with adequate mental health. A lot of our customers were dealing with thyroid conditions, which often relates to depression. So that's why we came out with nascent iodine, but we found that it helps the thyroid on so many other levels. Simply put, nascent iodine is more bioidentical to the thyroid, so it goes straight to work and heals it and gets it back into proper order. We came out with a calcium and magnesium supplement because a lot of people like to take additional calcium. This is balanced and ratioed after the EMP, so it's the same safe format. We don't recommend people take minerals, additional minerals with our products because it throws off the balance. But this calcium supplement with magnesium can be taken with the EMP. It's really cool. It's awesome. And last but not least, we have our olive leaf extract. Now, olive leaf extract is an antifungal. Some people were dealing with a blockage in their intestines and they weren't able to absorb the nutrition properly. So we came out with this because it's helping them kill off that bad candida and help you absorb the micronutrients and EMP in a better way. So olive leaf extract is an antifungal, antiviral, antioxidant, and antibacterial all in one. And research is showing, that's why we say cardio health now, that it's been helping people with their heart and their cardiovascular health. It's been amazing because of the antioxidants in it. So that's available, good for cold and flu season too. But again, I'm not here to sell you on this, I'm here to sell you on an idea. But who doesn't want to improve their life? Who doesn't want to help their neighbor or their friends who's struggling? If one of you, if you guys in here, if some of you aren't struggling, I'm sure you know people that are. And what better way to prevent and nourish your body? Life truly is more vibrant with True Hope. Thank you.